guys! So I thought, whilst I had a little bit of time to spare, I would do the guilty reader tag. I've seen a few people do this, like Ariel and Sana who did it together, or Emma from Drinking by Myself, and I really enjoyed watching it. So I thought, hey, I could answer these questions. Why not? I will obviously link the original creator down below, as well as the other people who I've mentioned. But without further ado, let's get into the questions. So question number one is, have you ever re-gifted a book you have been given? Yes and no. I, like Emma, have never been gifted a book by somebody and then wrapped it back up and given it to somebody else. But I have definitely obtained books over the years. Either they've been sent to me from publishers, or even maybe they were given to me and then I read them and then didn't want to keep them and have passed them on. I quite often pass on books and give them to my friends if I decide I'm not going to read them, or if I have read them and they would just like to read them, because share the joy. So there is a good chance that books that I didn't buy myself have then made their way into the hands of my friends, which I think is absolutely fine. I wouldn't mind if somebody did that with a gift I gave them. Question number two is, have you ever said you've read a book that you haven't actually read? Now, I know a lot of people say they've done this for university and school. I don't feel like we had that much required reading for my English class in school, or an excessive amount of fiction reading for my university classes, because I didn't do an English literature class. Nothing that I never managed to get to, so I think I did do all of the required reading for school. Mainly. There is another question that a school book will come up in, but I can't think of anything I told a teacher I read. But I'm sure I used to say I'd read Pride and Prejudice. I'm sure I've said that I've read Pride and Prejudice before, and I haven't read Pride and Prejudice. But it strikes me as a book that I might have told people I've read. And oh, also, when I first started university, I'm sure I said that I'd read certain bits of ancient literature that I hadn't read, that everyone seemed to have read. So I was like, yeah, sure, I've read the Odyssey. Yeah, totally. Antigone by Sophocles. Yeah, that's a book I've read. I still haven't read Antigone, and I have read the Odyssey now, but I hadn't read it when I first started university. But I think there's almost this, I think there's obviously a pressure when you first start university, you feel a little bit inadequate, but I don't think that all of your classmates have actually read all of those things either. You're all just trying to sort of like look like you have to one another. So yeah, I think there was a bit of that when I first started university, but I think if I was ever required to read something, I did read it, because I obviously didn't have anything better to do with my time. Have you ever borrowed a book and not returned it? Accidentally, yes. I realised the other day when I was in my attic in my like family home that I had a geography textbook that was definitely from my secondary school. I didn't buy that for myself. I dropped geography, which is maybe why it never went back to the class. I probably just stopped going I probably just dropped geography, and then the textbook just somehow ended up in my attic. So I do feel a little bit guilty about that, especially given the lack of resources that secondary schools have, but it's been such a long time now, I doubt it's the same geography book that they still use. I also remember once borrowing a non-fiction book on Sherlock Holmes from the National Library in Scotland to do a long essay I was writing in my final year of secondary school, and lost it, so I had to pay for it. Like, that wasn't a circumstance of, you know, just not giving it back. I did say I'd lost it and then paid for it, but then like a year later I found it in a suitcase. Next up is, have you ever read a series out of order? Yes, so many times. I am so bad for this. I did it a lot when I was younger. I think especially before my access to things like Goodreads, and when the internet wasn't as popular when I was a kid, it was really easy to accidentally do things like that, because so many book series are not well marked with like 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've done this tons of times. One time I did it with Twilight, in that I didn't read the first one, so I don't know if that really counts as reading them out of order, but I skipped the first book in the series after watching the film and just read the next 3 books. So kind of, I don't know if that counts. I also definitely, like I said, definitely read a number of children's book series out of order, like started with the second one when I was a kid. I can't remember specifically. I also remember when I was sort of around 12, 13 reading these like Mates Dates books, which were like a series of books about like sort of young teenagers in school, you know, like first like about friendships and like first romances and things like that, and I definitely read those just as I found them in the bookshop, which was another thing. I just had to find the books as they had them in the library in the bookshop, so that was another reason I would quite often just pick up what they had if I wanted another one of those books. Definitely read Jacqueline Wilson's Girls series out of order. I think I started with the third one, Girls Out Late, and then backtracked and read the other ones. Some of the series within the Terry Pratchett Discworld series I have read out of order, so all of the Discworld books are set on the same planet, but within the Discworld books there are series where characters sort of follow, you know, a linear narrative between each book. I definitely read the Witches books out of order because I read Witches Abroad before I read Weird Sisters, because part of me just feels like sometimes it's just like then you go back and you're reading a prequel, so it's never really bothered me. But I've definitely done that a lot of times. Have you ever spoiled a book for somebody else? I might have. I've never had somebody say to me, you have spoiled that book for me, so I'm really not sure. It's definitely possible, although I try to avoid spoilers in my videos. Somebody might have watched a video that they shouldn't have where I gave a spoiler or I accidentally said too much, so apologies if I ever did spoil that for you. Next up is, have you ever dog-eared a book? Yes, I did this so much more when I was younger. All of my kids' books, when I was a teenager as well, I was the worst for dog-earing. If it's my book, it still doesn't really bother me. But because I did it so much, I probably did it a few times to a couple of my dad's books, and he was not pleased. He does not believe in dog earing, and he sort of told me to stop, so I stopped obviously doing it to his books. I'd never really done it to library books, and just over the years it's kind of faded out as a habit. I will occasionally do it if it's my book and I don't have access to a bookmark, or if it's a uni book and I just want to mark a few pages to go back to. I don't do it as much now, but I did tons when I was younger. Have you ever told somebody you don't own a book when you do? I can't think of anything. I guess this is attached to the sort of shame of reading certain books, like, oh, no, I don't own Twilight, or no, I don't own 50 Shades of Grey. Now, I don't actually own either of the series, but if I did, I would not be ashamed of it. I did once upon a time own Twilight, I got rid of it. And I'm just not ashamed of anything that's on my bookshelf. I'm just not ashamed of owning any books. Why would I be? I still have some of the Charmed, like, published fan fiction I read as a teenager in my attic. I'm keeping those. Same, I think the next one's basically the same thing. Have you ever told someone you haven't read a book when you have? I really don't think so. Like, I've never been somebody that's felt much shame attached to reading. So no, I really can't think of anything that I have said I haven't read that I have read. Then we have you ever skipped a chapter in a book? Yes. So this was when I was thinking of school books earlier in the video. I definitely, when we were reading A Winter's Tale for my English class in school, skipped the second act. I think it's of 3 acts, Winter's Tale by Shakespeare. And we were reading Winter's Tale and The Tempest. And I read all The Tempest, but for some reason, maybe it was just I wasn't at school that week when they were discussing that act, so I just thought, I'm not going to read it. And I read the first act, skipped the second act, and read the third act. To this day, the play, I don't remember properly. It's a weird, foggy mystery in my mind, and I should really go back and read it all because that was such a strange thing to do. But it was probably tied to what we were doing in class, and I only read the other 2 because it was like very much like I had to, because we were talking about them, or maybe we were reading it in class, but I definitely did not read the second act of A Winter's Tale. I also didn't never go back and read them, but with the Game of Thrones books I always had a tendency to skip to the people that I enjoyed the most. So if I had just read a Daenerys chapter and wanted more Daenerys, I would like find the next Daenerys chapter and read that, or I would find the next Arya chapter and read that, but I would always go back and read the other chapters. I did always go back because there was too much plot you'd miss if you didn't do that, but I did skip and go all over the place. And lastly, have you ever badmouthed a book you actually liked? I think this again goes with the questions of lying about owning or having read books. No, not really. I think, like Emma said in her video, I will happily criticise books I like. So I love the Sookie Stackhouse series. They're pretty cheesy, quite repetitive, and the writing is average. And like I mentioned, I used to love reading Charmed like books, and again, writing, average. I loved reading them, every single second of reading them though. But I will definitely point out the things I don't think are amazing about the books, but it doesn't change how I felt reading them, and I'll never pretend I didn't enjoy them. So yeah, those are all the answers, those are all of the questions. I think this is a really fun tag, so if you want to do it, please consider yourself tagged by me and let me know if you do it. I'd love to watch it. If you just like to answer the questions in the comments, then I would love to hear your answers to any of these questions, or if you have any responses to my answers, please do leave them in the comments down below. But until next time guys, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!